Thank you. It is a privilege for me to be here today because of such a critical issue as the abolition of the death penalty. We go back into Scripture. One of the great statements of the Hebrew Scriptures in Deuteronomy is as Moses is looking over the promised land and knows that he will not go across the river Jordan. He says to the people and the leaders, "And I set before you life or death. Choose life, and you will prosper." And I think that's the challenge that we have, is to choose life. The recent popes, Blessed John Paul II, was consistent in saying how important it is to choose life, and that in many areas now, with the increased ability of prison, making sure that everything is locked up and so on, it is not very rarely needed to use the death penalty to protect society. And Pope Benedict the 16th has repeated that in one of his encyclicals, to say that we don't need to use death to get back at death. And so the bishops of California have issued a statement in favor of Proposition 34, and the United States Catholic Bishops' Conference has also issued a statement in 2005 against the death penalty. The repealing of the death penalty under Proposition 34 with a sentence of life in prison and no possibility of parole is a good thing. Because we look at what's happened with the death penalty. Irreversible mistake of executing an innocent person does not respect life. And the system is easily flawed, prone to error and bias, because it is very difficult for poor people to afford a good and experienced death penalty lawyer to help that person through the appeals and so on. Also, the great cost of DNA testing, which many poor people can't afford, which is so helpful in determining guilt or innocence in many of the death row sentences. It is hard to restore justice when people are still alive and struggling to have human dignity. It is quite impossible to restore justice after they have been put to death. Serious crime needs to be addressed. Serious sentences, life without possibility of parole, is a severe sentence that meets our goal of public safety while better responding to the sanctity of human life. Archbishop Cordione has issued a letter using that phrase and using those examples. Also, it is important, like Bud Welsh's daughter died in 1995 in the Oklahoma City bombings. But he said, "My conviction is simple. More violence will not bring my daughter back. More violence only makes our society more violent." And Pope John said, the death penalty, John Paul II rather, to view the death penalty in the context of a penal system ever more in line with human dignity is in the end God's plan for man and for society. To maintain, our Catholic Catechism says, to maintain security in prison, to defend public order is a demand that we all have. But requiring restitution to victims is a way of making sure that those who are guilty know the consequences of what they've done. Ending the death penalty, says the U.S. bishops, would be one important step away from a culture of death and toward a culture of life. And the California bishops have said, use of death penalty unnecessarily, it is impractical and expensive. And that is very much important as we listen to what people of Proposition 34 say, that it can save California money, believe it or not, but it is true, almost $100 million, to end the death penalty and to have life imprisonment and without possibility of parole. It is the challenge of, again, choosing life and what is the best for our society. It is a developing understanding in Europe and in moral theology that the best way is not to use murder, not to use death penalty, not to use death, but to use the choosing of life, the security, so that we are protected and the restitution is given to the families.